Alright, we're out here. Definitely awesome helper. Big. We're going to be pouring this concrete. We're using Nation's Mini Mix. We'll pour it on site. And got this section here to pour, as well as a little piece over there, and then some stuff in front. So you get to see the process. We're gonna pour about a 3,000 psi and try about a 4-inch slump. There we go. Have your wheelbarrow facing the right direction so that when you get ready to pour it and move the chute out of the way, it's in a line, you just go with it. Trying to turn a wheelbarrow that's full of concrete can be challenging and tough, and you risk the chance of it tipping over. So think ahead of every step that you do so to make it easier later on. Here at Nations, they mix on site, so the truck's not coming down the road already pre-mixed. So it has dry ingredients: gravel, sand, cement, and water, all separated and mixing on site. They can mix different slumps that you want. What that means is the runnier the mix, the higher the slump. The stiffer the mix, the lower the slump. So to make it more user-friendly on a flat surface, 4 to 5 inch slumps gives it a pretty good workability. But keeping in mind, if you add just more water just to make it more runny, you're also weakening the concrete. So this portion right here where I'm finishing now is pretty flat, so 4 to 5 inch slump is going to work out great. The next section, it goes a little transition from flat to a little sloped section. So we're going to have Nations on this next section pour a little drier mix. That way it's not just running and sloughing off. Here you're going to see me rod the concrete using a 2x4. Sometimes you can use a aluminum screed board. There's other types of forms that you can use to rod the concrete. Here I'm going to set the 2x4 across on the flat surface right at the transition point. So I'm going to slope it down to the 2x4 currently where it's at and rod it from that section there. So there's a little bit of a transition in slopes. That's the beauty about concrete. You can conform and shape any shape that you want, as long as you have the skill and the knowledge to do it. Here I'm really hustling, trying to get the concrete spread, leveled, screed, and then at the same time magging it. Trying to get it as much before the next wheelbarrow full of concrete gets there. But there's some times where you just got to have the concrete wait just a minute to get it magged or laid down flat before you move on, because it's going to be a few minutes before we get back to it. In this case here, it might even be about 30 minutes before I get back to it. And that's all it seems to be a lot of time when if you don't lay it down and trowel it in just to get it leveled out, closed up, a little honeycomb holes locked in, it's going to be a lot harder later. So having the truck wait till you can catch and keep catched up or caught up is well worth the time. And it's well worth the time for a little bit extra it might cost to have the truck wait. If it was a mixed at a batch plant, if the truck was mixed at a batch plant, you only have a certain amount of time to get it all laid down. The beauty about having it mixed on site is that I'm not competing against the clock with the mixed mud in the truck per se. but I am getting charged extra the longer it takes for him to be waiting on me. As you can see here, real quick, I'm going back and making sure everything is magged off with the magnesium trowel, just to close up any little holes, unevenness, that sort of thing before we keep moving forward. So sometimes it's a little difficult on big pours to stay caught up like this, and you need more help. So just on a small pour like this, just the two of us, it's a little easier to stay caught up. Here I'm plugging some holes that when I was dragging the screed across, kind of pulls and leaves a little low spot. So kind of filling those in and then getting caught up. When you get to the end like this against the house, you want to be careful that the splatter of the concrete's not going to splatter up against the house or onto the house. Here I'm holding the expansion board against the concrete so that when I pour concrete, it's not going in between the expansion material and the existing concrete. So I'm pressing against it so it holds it in place. So be careful about that existing structure such as this against the house. Using the rod to kind of keep me level and in line with one side and the other. Here I'm going to take my bull float. It's been sitting in the sun, so it's nice and warm, and hose it off just a little bit to cool it down, wet it, and then using it further to help flatten the concrete. It's also really good at bringing the cream, so to speak, it's actually the cement, up towards the surface a little bit more to give it a little better finish. This bull float has rounded edges. They also make them with square edges. I personally like the rounded edges, just if there's slight unevenness, it's not digging into the sides. So here I'm dragging one direction, and it's because it's got just a little bit of a slope to it. Usually you're dragging and pushing back and forth, being very careful not to dig it in. But just like that, I'm pushing back and forth, and that section there is a little bit flatter. More to the left, it wasn't.
Trowel.
So what we got it all laid down, and when it's called rodding, raking, that sort of thing, the concrete, as you're rodding, it actually drags and pulls the concrete with you, so it kind of makes it a little lower. So there's times when you got to grab some fresh concrete, sprinkle it on areas like little pockets like this when you're going across. So what I did is I took some concrete and I threw it on right there, and then I'm using my mag trowel, the magnesium trowel, and going across it, kind of filling those in. If you have a high spot, sometimes you can drag it over, but that sort of thing. So now that that's close, I'm going to take my bull float, is what this is called. And since I'm uphill just a little bit, I'm just going to drag it one direction and not going too steep with it. The steeper it is, the more it digs in. Flatter is the flat finish. So I'm actually kind of pushing down just to get some pressure and then easing up right at the last bit. I got a little low spot right here that I'm going to take my pile, some fresh concrete, I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to work that in. So it's only been like 45 minutes, so this is all still relatively wet, but it's starting to stiffen up. And stiffen up to the point where I could just start using this going across. When I get over here, there's a couple more pockets that I can get some more.
Turned off.
It's still going, you just can't see it. Right like that. And then I'm going to come back with the bull float because it's nice and flat and straight. And work it flat again. So what I purposely did by using Nations, I can have him pour a stiffer mix. So the sloped area has got a little bit stiffer mix, and the flatter areas has a little bit runnier mix. The runnier it is, the weaker the concrete. It's not the opposite. Okay, so that's real important. Just because you want to add a whole bunch of water to make it more user-friendly as far as working and getting it laid down, you're actually weakening the concrete. It's that water to cement ratio that's there. Less water makes a stronger mix. So it's kind of like a balancing kind of trying to have just the right amount of water and keeping it workable. So what I'm doing now is all these little pockets right there, kind of seal those all up, and there's several of them. This looks a little more pretty. A little bit. So this is going to be an exposed aggregate. That's kind of what this old concrete is an exposed aggregate. You can see the aggregate, hence the word exposed. Normally, the easier, cheaper way, faster way of doing it is just a broom finish. I like a broom finish actually quite a lot, but here it would really stand out if it was not exposed. So we got real old concrete and brand new concrete. So we want them to match best as we can. So using what I plan on using to give it that exposed aggregate look is sugar water. Sugar water keeps that concrete, keeps the cement from hardening. So, like say a concrete truck going down the road and he gets a flat tire or something like that. The truck actually has bags of sugar in the truck that they break down for any reason. They can just toss that bag into the truck and the concrete won't get hard. So, come over here. We are ready for edging now, Dick. So right up here, I can only go one direction because it's the transition of slopes. I got a little hole right there, so I dragged a little bit of that cream. We did a really good job on the mix. So we're into this about an hour and a half. We started edging it. We got most of it edged using an edging trowel like this. Go along the expansion joint here. Did a real nice job. And then coming back, following through with the mag trowel again to get rid of all those ridges right along here. That. And then I'm going to come through and I'm going to use my joiner. So I've already put in these joints But like right here, it kind of sealed back up. I'm gonna open it back up. Make it look good, pretty. At this point, I'm just pretty much about done with the edging along the edges. It's just a matter of cleaning it up. Since I'm doing the exposed aggregate look, it's starting to set up. We're going to give it probably another 45 minutes, 30 minutes. We'll see. It depends on, it really all depends on the, I'll show you how to clean that up. So we got it, like Vic pointed out, there's the edge there. So I'm just kind of dragging a little bit of this cream. I'm going to put a little more, a little more. I'm going to make that all go away. Like that. Nice. Over here on this other side, and I'm only putting it out here on the end, not the whole trowel. Beautiful. Yeah. Like that. Use my mag trowel to clean up this edge. I'm actually pushing down on this edge because if I just floated the cream over top of it, when I do the exposed aggregate, those lines will actually come out and show real bad. So I'm wanting to kind of push down on it. It collapses that joint just a little bit, and it's going to reach a point where I'm going to have to live with it or not. And frankly, I'm going to live with it. I did smaller joints here. So I measured from end to end is about 15 feet. And since we're real narrow here, I made the joints come in closer. Usually, typically for like commercial, if you have a good base, which this doesn't have good base, this is just dirt. Should be like on rock. 10 foot by 10 foot is about the max for without a joint. So anything bigger than that, rule of thumb, is you need to have a joint. Right along this edge, I have construction joint. It's an expansion material, or excuse me, it's an expansion joint. So the concrete can expand. This here can expand, and it's not going to buckle and crack the concrete. Okay, so this side here is pretty ugly. Rather than just starting here, I'm gonna go dive right into that joint so it kind of pushes it back side to side. Otherwise, I'll be, if I just dug it and straight in from one end to the other, it would have just scraped all that cream out. So I went right into that joint, and that's fairly ugly down there. So I'm gonna clean that up. Turn the trowel around. Clean that up. Grab this. It's getting to that point where it's getting pretty darn stiff. And I'm going to be spraying that sugar water on it here just shortly. In the next 30 minutes. Kind of the feel. If it's windy, the surface is gonna take off on you and get hard where everything underneath isn't. If it's too hot, it's gonna, or if it's hot, rather, it'll harden up a lot faster because all the moisture is evaporating out of it. Drag a little more of this. Clean that edge up. I think the best joints that I like are saw cut joints, but that's kind of more work as well later. So yeah, this is getting nice. Stiff. I'm actually pushing pretty hard on it. up with. So right here, I'm using the steel trowel. I got a rounded edges, kind of. It's also known as like a pool trowel. But over on that end over there, I had a pretty good slope to it, transition of slopes. And if I had just a nice square trowel, I'd be digging in all the time. So what I'm doing right now is sealing the concrete, is what it's kind of called. And with the magnesium trowel, it keeps the surface open so the moisture can get out. Now I'm kind of sealing it so the moisture can stay in. I want that moisture to come out of it at a even rate. Move that over a bit. And I'm only right now going to do what's in the sun. So that's what's hardening up pretty. Sorry, boss. I'll hold it. I won't do the what's in the well, I won't do what's in the shade yet. It's not really pretty soft. And then here, give it probably a half hour or less. And it all depends on how hard it's looking. Whether or not I go ahead and sprinkle the sugar water. I have a sugar water, probably about a cup to a gallon or so. So that's probably about a 2-gallon sprayer. Hopefully it works. Worked the last time I used it. So let's go to the front. You'll see the other spot where we poured. It's where I demoed the brick and put some joints in it. Bada bing, bada boom, it's done just like that, you know. Oh, it would be nice if all you had to do was snap your fingers and it was done. But you can see I put some joints in it because it's pretty thin. It's about 2.5, 3 inches in spots, and 4 inches would be better. Over in this area, I got it above the concrete just a little, and that is because that back edge, I want it to be a little more level. This area over here was in the shade, so it's going to be a lot softer. That brick gonna go on the back there, so I'm not too worried about what that back looks like. So I'm putting very light pressure on this, and I just have a very slight angle. Up too much, you're dragging it, and so I think that's gonna be good so far. All right, life of a finisher. Concrete truck gets there, you bust your tail off laying the concrete down. Okay, so we got the concrete down. So we're waiting for it to get hard, or set up even a little further before we sprinkle it with sugar water. So what we do now for about 10 minutes or so is munch on a sandwich and take a breather. I'm like out of breath, but that's what you do. And then finish your sandwich. Then you go back and you bust your tail again. Hard troweling is what that steel trowel that I was doing. Hard trowel it, seal it up, and then it's this area right here is just getting hard enough where if I touch it, see how it just barely puts a fingerprint? That right there is ready for sugar water. So give it a minute. If I sprinkled sugar water a little too early, and quantity wise it's going to give you a deeper exposed aggregate. I want it to be fairly light. All this out here is actually pretty heavy, but even though it's going to be different, it's new concrete, I want it to be fairly light, kind of more like this area. Ooh, can't hardly see. More like this area here. So that's what I'm after. So let's give it a minute, eat our sandwich, and we'll get back to it. All right, so now we're ready for some sugar water. Get my glove off. Attract ants, I know it. I know it will. Right, like that, get it nice and saturated. It'll run and it'll dry and that edge is real good. And then give it a few hours, and a hot day like this, it'll just won't take too long. And yeah, come back and hose it off with a broom, and it'll just take that surface off. So again, we got about 1 cup to a gallon. So fairly sweet mix. Should we try it? Nah. There's other stuff in this. Again, I don't want to do that. So I'm getting that edge real good. So the old concrete, all that new concrete that's splattered on it, it'll keep it from setting up. I'm not going to get that yet. I just hard troweled it because it started getting in the sun. But we're going to get that little piece that's over here. That's ready. Sugar water. You can almost see it right here. Not letting it set up. I'm gonna leave that alone. Don't even mess with it until dries off and cures. So I'm gonna touch it. You can see that it just barely makes a fingerprint in it. And over on this end has been in the shade a lot longer, so it's a bigger fingerprint. Then you get over here and further in the shade, it's like a much deeper fingerprint. So this area is not ready. Otherwise, if I spray this on there too early, it's going to be a much heavier exposed aggregate. So we'll get this section over here that was in the sun. I guess I'm going to go right to the joint. It gives it a good breaking point. And keeping in mind, you don't want to trowel this, otherwise it's going to be a really thick, deep exposed aggregate, and that's not what you want. So plus the water actually helps the curing process, so that keeps the water from going out too quickly. That's curing. So we want it nice and even. It's been about 2.5 hours since we poured the very beginning, about 2 hours since we poured this, and here we are spraying this on it already, you know. Not to mention all the prep. We got several hours of prep that we did beforehand. So we'll go leave, and then we'll come back and wash it off, and you'll get to see that process. So go ahead and hose it off a little bit. So we're doing our exposed aggregate now. Let it set up for about, I think about a total of, what is it, about 5 hours? I think it is. So, got that sugar water that was all sprayed on it. I mean, it's hard where I can walk on it that hard, you know, but the surface is how do I want to say it? It's not binding. Maybe that's a good word. And it's just the concrete cream's gonna come off. I'm gonna come up here on the surface here. So if I didn't put that sugar water on here, I couldn't broom it like this. It'd have that kind of look to it. So there's lots of sands that is went down the slope, and I gotta rinse off. And all that sand is down there on the bottom, but that's what it's gonna look like. Like that. Pretty easy. Gonna look pretty darn sharp. It's gonna blend in real nice with that old concrete. So right here, it's not want to come off very good. We'll give that a broom. This cement, now that it's been hardened up, just wash that right into the grass. It's not going to hurt the grass. It's already hardened up what it would have done, so it's not going to make the ground any harder. And I've actually done it where it changed the pH in the soil of the grass sometimes just a little bit. And notice that grass tends to grow a little better even. That's it. Maybe it's the water. All right, so we got front here pressure washed. I got all the sand and the cement off of it, and it's got that exposed aggregate type look. Matches up pretty good here. This portion here where the brick was, I could take some muriatic acid, and put it on there, and it'll eat the cement. And then once after it gets through eating the cement, it starts diluting and turning back to a normal pH. And you don't need to just wash it off. That's basically all you need to do. So this is what this looks like. All poured back. You almost can't even hardly tell that it's, we got the old and the new on each side. Of course it looks a lot better, but it's because I don't have all these cracks in it. And this concrete's gonna crack. It'll just crack right in those joints. So that's the whole idea with that. And then we poured this section over here. So that's kind of it, a wrap. Hope you enjoyed the video on